for joining us.
Thank you.
It's Trial Tuesday with David Aylor, and it's been just over a year since a former CFC student was killed while working on train tracks as part of a movie crew in Georgia. And the director of that picture just pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter and criminal trespassing. So David Aylor is here to tell us more about the case and, of course, what all this means. And you said this is kind of a first, right?
Right. Obviously it was a tragedy that happened with the death of this young lady while they were filming. But there's been a few other deaths over time within the filming industry. And actually one time back in 1982, probably the most famous is when John Landis and another person involved with the Twilight Zone filming, a couple of people were killed, and they also were charged with involuntary manslaughter related to the children that died. However, that case was ultimately dropped. It never actually went forward to the point of a conviction. So it was a lot of interesting eyes looking at this, trying to determine what would happen. And then yesterday, right before the trial started, the main director actually decided to go ahead and plead guilty to the charge, which was a surprise, and he's actually going to prison.
Now, for people who might be unfamiliar with the case, and it's been all over the headlines, but they were on train tracks, correct? Was it like a bridge?
Right, they were on a bridge, basically at a train trestle, and they were filming a dream scene. This movie about Greg Allman's life, and it was supposed to be a dream scene with the main actor, William Hurt, laying down on a bed. And two trains had already passed, and then they thought that that was going to be the only trains that came that day. Ultimately, a third train came. They couldn't get off the tracks quick enough, and this young lady was ran over. The key issue, though, was, of course, did they have permission to be there? So he actually pled to involuntary manslaughter as well as criminal trespassing, because it turned out while they alleged to have had permission from the paper company that actually owned the land, CSX, which runs the train tracks there and here, they did not have permission. So ultimately, they knew they weren't supposed to be there, and that's really where the criminal issue lies, because obviously these people on the crew were putting their trust in the people that put the production on, and they weren't supposed to be there, and ultimately, they put them at harm's risk, and this lady lost her life.
How horrible. So, is this going to be a case that people look back on and reference, since you said this is a first?
I think so. You've had several different incidents over the years. There was one where Brandon Lee, which was actually Bruce Lee's son, that died during a movie shoot because he was shot with a real gun instead of a gun that just had blanks in it. So there's been a few different incidents, but this is the first one where someone's actually pled to a criminal charge related to actually, a death or injury from a movie set.
What does this mean for filmmakers? Do they need to be, obviously they should always be careful and get the right permissions and stuff, but do you think this kind of sends a message that,
I think it absolutely does. On a couple levels, we've always had civil cases that come and arise from different injuries or accidents that have happened on the movie set. So that was really something we've seen many times in the past. But for someone actually to have criminal liability for something that happened with the set as sort of the head of the production, we've never seen that before. We've never seen someone actually go all the way through and actually be convicted and now be going to prison here really soon.
And what do you think his sentencing will be?
It's looking like that he's going to get sentenced to 2 years and then a number of years probation after that. Another individual, part of the production, also got just probation, but ultimately he'll do at least a year in prison and have a lot of consequences thereafter related to his probation and his status as a movie producer.
Yeah. Now, obviously, nothing is going to truly heal the family, but I would think that this outcome is better, that they don't have to sit through a trial.
Right. I think so. Obviously, there's a lot of relief for them. They feel like their daughter's death is not in vain. And, from everything that I've read and seen, they're really trying to put more publicity and news out there related to safety on set so something like this doesn't happen again.
I know in the media when it came down yesterday, it was, a big kind of shocker for us in the legal community.
Absolutely.
Do you guys share stuff and everybody was like, wow?
Yeah, I think there was a lot of surprise. I think ultimately there must have been more that would have come out related to what they knew or should have known at that time, and that's specifically related to should they really have been out there on those tracks. And if he knew that they shouldn't have been out there on the tracks and still put the crew in harm's way, then ultimately that criminal liability would probably fall on his shoulders. So his attorneys, I guess, suggested he would move forward with a plea, and he did.
Do you think a lot with these smaller films that a lot of people don't kind of do stuff without the correct?
I think when you have, obviously we're not talking about movies. These are independent films more often than not, where you have movies on a higher stature with higher budgets and things, attorneys and things like that to sort of set up these contracts ahead of time. But yeah, you're going to see more risk. But you see here that no matter what level you're at, if you put that risk out and someone actually ends up getting hurt, I wouldn't be surprised if this happened again.
All right, thank you so much. Great
Thanks for having
insight
me.
and explanation. Trial Tuesday with David Aylor right here, and we'll have much more to come on Low Country Live, so stay with us.
Trial Tuesday, brought to you by attorney David Aylor.